You know, I learned a great lesson from that about persistence, and you have to be persistent. I think the question that many people ask is, you know, how do I get an agent? How do I get a publishing? We're going to talk about that. I'm sure you have lots of questions. But one of the best things is to simply be persistent. But I will also say this gets more into the heart of what I wanted to share with you. The old models, even though, as Tom said, it's absolutely true, the publishing business is still flourishing. People are still going to buy books. I mean, the book is not dead, and it's going to be around for a long, long time. I mean, people have been saying, nah, books, since Gutenberg, and, you know, 500 years ago. But the traditional methods are changing. It used to be, even a few years back when I first started or tried to break into this business, you know, you got a copy of Writer's Digest, you looked up in Writer's Digest, you know, for all the agents and publishers you thought would be right for your work. You sent them a query letter, right? The old query letter, and then you waited for 6 to 8 weeks to get a response. You got a rejection. Then you went on to the next one. Well, pretty soon, you know, a couple of years have gone by as you're waiting for these rejection letters to come along. And that's really not how it's done. I think that model is very passé. And there's some ways to get into this business that are will serve you much better than the traditional query response. I mean, people will still tell you that, send me a query letter, send me a sample chapter. Well, okay, but there's some better ways. And one of the ways that you can look at this business that I think bears some consideration if you are an aspiring writer and want to get your work published is the self-publishing industry. And that's come a long way, even in the past 5 years. And we're no longer talking about vanity publishing. Back in the days of vanity presses, I mean, if you had enough money, you could hire somebody to bind your manuscript, and you could call it a book, and you would be a published author. Self-publishing had that image for the first few years it was around, but it has started to mature, and it is a very viable way. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It means anybody can be published, anybody can write a book, and anybody can have a book published. So it creates a lot of material. I mean, the old slush piles that used to gather at the offices of the publishing companies and the agents have only gotten deeper. And the chances of getting through the slush pile to somebody who could really do something for you are getting slimmer and slimmer. That's one of the risks of self-publishing. So you have to do it smartly. And I think there's some tricks that we could probably share with you to get that done. But the first thing I want to tell you is that don't look at self-publishing as sort of a vanity way to get yourself published. It could be a very viable way into the business with the tools that are available today. And there was one example I wanted to share with you. If I could just pull this out of Publishers Weekly yesterday. There's an article on a young lady by the name of Darcy Chan, who some of you may know her story. She, in real life, is an attorney and works on legislation for, of all people in the U.S. government, particularly the Senate. And she had an idea for a book. She lives in Vermont, and she self-published the book, and decided that if she sold 2,000 or 3,000 copies, she would consider herself to be lucky. Well, I highly recommend, I won't read this whole thing to you, but she's now somewhere north of 400,000 sold copies. And what she did was she self-published the book, and it's a good book. What she was able to demonstrate, however, was that she could sell her story. As Tom was talking about, You know, the publishing business today, the risk is, will this book sell? Self-publishing, if you do it the right way and sell some copies, takes away some of the risk for a traditional publisher. And, you know, if you sell a couple thousand copies, all of a sudden they're a lot more interested than if simply you walk through the door with the manuscript as an unknown quantity. Digital publishing offers us all kinds of ways to accomplish this. There's literally a kiosk that's available now. I saw one at the Publishers Show at the Javits Center last year, where you could take a little zip drive, a thumb drive, and stick it into the side of this kiosk. It looks something like an old-fashioned, London telephone booth, if you can conjure up that image. And you flip the switch, and you feed it whatever it requires in terms of your credit card, and 10 minutes later you have a book. It'll print the book, bind it, put a cover on it, and boom, it comes out just like a Coke, you know, at the bottom of the vending machine. So, you know, there are machines that will do that. But there are a lot of folks, you know, Amazon is the king of the beasts in publishing these days, not only because of their website and the millions and millions of books that they sell, but because they've also gotten into the publishing business. And in fact, what's the gentleman's name they just hired?
Lawrence Kirschbaum.
Yeah, Lawrence Kirschbaum, a longtime veteran of the publishing, traditional publishing business. He's now their director of book publishing, and you know they're acquiring digital titles to do what? Put on the Kindle or the Kindle Fire. So not only are they the king of the book world, but they're trying to become the king and be-all and end-all of the publishing business as well.
Yeah, they're doing three things, which is pretty remarkable. It used to be separated by different companies. They had been the creator of the product when they invented the Kindle, the reading device. They already were the distributor of books, and now they're originating content. So it's like what used to be three different companies or three different sub-industries within the publishing industry is now being contained within one company. And that is, on the one hand, you might think, oh, is that a good thing? Well, as Phil can better explain, it is a good thing in the sense that since they're making so many things available, have such a reach, and they don't have to worry about actually cutting down forests and manufacturing books. So it's kind of democratizing the publishing industry in a lot of ways. It's opening up more avenues for people to get their work published. And in the case of, you mentioned Lawrence Kirschbaum, who when he retired as an editor director, he was the head of Warner Books. Now what they're doing is they're putting in what they're trying to take care of what some of the concerns have been, which is what's the filter, who evaluates the quality of the work that's going to be put out there. Well, that's what this group is supposed to do. You know, the Amazon wants to assure consumers that what we're making available for download is not just any piece of crap that somebody decided to post on the site. It's worth downloading. You know, it's worth. It was just $2.99. It's worth paying $2.99 for it.
And you'll see other companies that started to follow suit. Penguin just recently opened their own digital publishing division, and so did the New York Times, Perseus Books, which is part of New York Times Publishing. They're actively looking for digital titles. And you'll find that in many cases that even the traditional publishers who are struggling with this whole, you know, what do we do between, you know, printing books and electronic books, are doing things such as this. Now, this is a galley of my next book, which is coming out in February, and it's published by St. Martin's. And the day that this book comes out in hardcover, on February 14th, they will simultaneously release the Kindle version.
Wow.
So, you know, they're doing that with a lot of books these days. Now, the hardcover of this book is going to sell for $27, which is pretty typical for a lot of, you know, new hardcovers of this size. And the digital version is going to sell for $12.99. What's the economics behind that? Well, for the author, it's terrific. Because I'll be very honest with you, although our mutual agent got me a very good deal with St. Martin's. Selling one hardcover copy of this book, you know, roughly, I'm going to make $3.
Because everybody along the way in publishing takes a piece of the action. The publisher, the distributor, the warehouse person, the agent, you know, everybody along the way takes a piece of the action. What's left after that $27 for Phil? $3.
Yeah. The $12.99 version that is going to be available on Kindle, the Nook, all of the electronic readers, I'm going to make 70% of. Do the math. So it's a whole, and for the publisher, it's also a good deal because they're not warehousing the books. They don't have all these remainders to worry about. There are no printing costs per se, or they can at least cut back on their printing costs. If I'm very, very fortunate as, well, this is my first, quote, major, end quote, book with a national publisher, and they're going to print 15,000 hardcover copies right off the bat. But I hope that they sell 50,000 electronic copies. Because that'll help drive the sales of the hardcover, but it'll also put a little bit more money in my pocket, and frankly, theirs too.
There's no risk involved. See, as I was saying earlier, if you overestimate, you know, let's say they print 15,000 copies of Phil's book, and this is only just hypothetical, Phil, but suppose it only sells 2,000 copies, okay? They absorb the risk. You know, they paid 15,000 copies and they have to destroy, you know, at least 10,000 or something like that. With an electronic book, there's an infinite number of copies available, connected completely to demand. You know, if there are 20,000 people out there pressing that button to download it, you can go ahead and do that. Yeah. If there's 50,000 people that are going to press that button download it, go ahead. You don't have to worry about cutting down more trees or the lengthy process of actually manufacturing a book. If I can just mention one other thing connected to what you were talking about, this actually my agent sent me this the other day. What's happening with traditional publishers and how they're reacting to what they originally perceived as the e-book threat is that they're going the way of the Prius. You know how Detroit decided let's do these hybrid cars. You know, gas, electric, whatever they are. Well, that's what the publisher's doing. Skyhorse Publishing is teaming with Paperless Publishing, an ebook publisher and conversion house, to acquire and develop short-form ebooks to be released simultaneously in paperback. The new program is launching this month. The two companies will work together to acquire new titles. Skyhorse will handle print production and distribution, while Paperless Publishing will take care of ebook distribution. So what they're doing is, you know, they're smartly, the smart publishers are saying, you know, if we can't beat them, join them. We see the future of publishing, and it's going to be that, you know, X number of years from now, the majority of people who read books are going to do so on an electronic device. You know, and so they're saying, you know, what we got to do, we've got to find a way to work together. So we're not left back in the dust as these companies, ebook companies, arise and start making progress and attracting more writers, agents, editors, things like that.
You see, the secret to this now is that if you want to get something published and you believe that your work is worthy of a wide audience who will accept it and read it, and more importantly, pay for it, you can sit around and wait for some agent to take their magic wand and anoint you, and then go out and get you a publisher, or you can be proactive. And the digital and self-publishing business that is thriving today allows you the opportunity to kind of circumvent that whole process and get something moving. Nothing succeeds like success. And if you sell 1,000 copies at 99 cents on an electronic reader or through Amazon, that tells an agent and a publisher that people are buying your book. It is worthy of someone's money, and therefore their attention. And the electronic slush pile is obviously enormous. I mean, there's millions and millions of pages of stuff out there. But people are discriminating. They're only going to pay for things that they really want to buy and read. And of course, with most of the electronic readers and most of the services, and this is true of Amazon, you can get a taste before you buy. You can sample a chapter, or you can sample a few pages of a book electronically, and if you get intrigued and interested, you hit the buy button and it's downloaded. So as an inspiring author, I would certainly, if you are in that category, encourage you to go out and do that and explore that route while you're waiting for the magic to happen. I think that in great measure, I got to hear, and this is the first of 3 books in this genre that I'm doing. I self-published 2 other books. They were both fiction books, and they did pretty well. In fact, the first of my self-published books I published through a CreateSpace, which is Amazon's in-house publisher, and it won an Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award in 2008. I submitted it to their annual contest, which is open to anyone with a manuscript. What's the risk? Didn't cost anything. I sent them my manuscript, and I didn't win first prize, but I won a prize. And I got to put that little gold seal on the cover of my book, which said Amazon Prize winner. Well, that got people's attention, and it helped me sell copies of the sequel. And I think that in great measure, the people that I've talked to, and certainly I'm very thrilled to be part of Nat's organization, but that helped get me attention. That let me rise a little bit higher above the slush pile and all the people out there who are creating. And as Tom said, go out and seek ways to become published. I don't care if it's the North Dakota Literary Journal. You get an article published there, you're a published author. And that sets you a little bit higher above the rest of people who are simply out there striving to write. Okay? We have a question. Yes?
I'm really confused because I just finished my program and it was a digital-based program, and I would consider myself like a traditional mind. Like, I believe in paper, I believe in printing, I believe in kind of like old school ways, because I know that technology does get outsourced and stuff, but I'm just saying for myself, I don't know, because I can make ebooks, so I don't know if I should seek an agent, because I want to do children's books. So do I make the raw copy as like if I want to do a pop-up book, do I make it raw and then go help, or do I make it all in like a bundled package and go help? You know what I mean?
It's a good question.
It's a good question, and I would say we may even have different answers. I'll go first if you want me to. I would say this. I would certainly look at my motive before making that decision. If my motive were to be financially successful, first and foremost, if I wanted to sell books to make money, you're going to make a lot more money doing it on your own.
Okay.
If my motive is to become recognized for my work, and why not? We all have egos. Egos are healthy. And we want to become part of the writing community on some recognized level, and you want to be, quote, a recognized, or dare I even say the word famous author, then I think working with the traditional methods might be a better way to go. But there's nothing wrong with doing both.
So much coding though.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing both.
Okay.
Now, a traditional publisher is going to beat the pants off of you at marketing your own book. I mean, they've got the resources, they've got the salespeople, they've got in-house marketing efforts, they've got the contacts with the book buyers, they obviously know the big box stores, they know the Barnes and Nobles of the world, the Costco's, everything else. They will get you the help that you need so you can get your book distributed in a fashion that certainly might be more than you'd be able to do on your own. So it's kind of like, what do I want out of this?
I don't even know if I can continue. What's worth it? Do I get a binding machine because I have like storyboards? Like, I just don't have hope in my originals. I don't know if that's just me being a little down or just, I don't know what to save and what to just, should I bind it and pay money to bind it, or, you know what I mean? Should I get the machine? I don't know.
Well, again, I think that's an economic decision that you have to make. If you're talking about creating these wonderful pop-up books with lots of different folds and images and a kind of three-dimensional look to them, a traditional publisher is probably going to be a lot more help to you in terms of their abilities to do that than trying to spend the thousands of dollars I'm sure it would take on binding machines and cutting machines and so on and so forth.
Yes, you just had a question.
On your self-publishing, how do you go about marketing it to the same degree that you would, than a publisher would? That would seem to be the essence of the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, let me just mention something first, and then Phil can tell you from his own experience. That is one of the big advantages that traditional publishers still have for a writer, is that when they accept a book of yours and you complete the book and it goes through the copy editing and other editing processes, and it's going into the production process, at the same time you get contacted by the PR department, the marketing department, and they start working out with you what their plan is going to be to get the book out there and noticed. And then once the maybe you get set up with some kind of tour, although actual physical book tours are starting to go the way of the dinosaur. But they'll set up things like radio interviews and maybe print interviews and other kind of promotional things. And that is something that is still a big advantage to the publisher, that they will do that for you and with you. And that's something that when you go, to some extent, if you go the self-publishing electronic route, that's going to be more your responsibility, and Phil had that personal experience.
Absolutely.
So how did that Chan lady do her 400,000 on her own? I did that right away when you said that.
She's a lawyer.
Yeah. She put it out electronically, what I'm trying to say.
Electronically, okay.
What's the risk factor of someone picking up her idea, changing a little bit, and
How do I
stealing
copyright?
her ideas?
Copyright.
Yeah,
Isn't that a risk?
it's a
You
risk.
think it's out there for the whole world?
There are a couple of questions here. Let's
Yeah.
try to separate them. First of all, if you're going to be self-publishing to make money, you have to be a marketer, or at least you have to have a sense of marketing or adopt a marketing mentality. Otherwise, you're going to have a nice collector's item that you can hand out to family and friends. Okay? And yeah, don't worry about that. You have to have a sense of marketing. You have to get into the marketing business. Now, how you can read this article about how Darcy Chan did it was she spent $1,000 on a book trailer. Everybody know what a book trailer is? She had a friend of hers who is a professional videographer help her create essentially what became a YouTube video. And she put out a video on YouTube about her book. And it started to get hits. First in the dozens, then in the hundreds, and then in the thousands. And people could see, we're a visual society these days, So much of what we do, whether it's our iPads or our iPhones or mobile phones or computers or laptops, we're a visual society. And we look first to the visual world to give us ideas. And, she was a YouTube sensation, and people went out and said, I want to buy that book. So she spent $1,000 creating that video, and that was her marketing piece. And then she sent information on her book to all of her friends on her email database, which happened to be considerable. She put up an author page on Facebook. So if you have a Facebook page, you go to bookmarks/pages, and you can set up additional pages about yourself. You can set up an author page, and you can write about your book. And how many people are on Facebook? And that's free. You can also set up, free, an author page on Amazon. Go to my author page, as an example. Tom's got one. And you can list.
If even Tom has one, you can have one. I caught the implication there.
So, you know, your author page on Amazon will list your book or your books. It'll allow you to put up promotional material on yourself and a little synopsis of your book. And obviously you're on Amazon. I mean, think of the millions and billions of ways people stumble into Amazon and different book titles and different topics. So that's the marketing sense that you have to have. You don't have to spend $1 bazillion. You don't have to hire a marketing company, but you have to be a bit of an entrepreneur. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your product and use the tools that are out there. Facebook, Twitter. St. Martin's sent me the other day. They've now got a social media editor. So the guy calls me up and says, all right, I'm going to send you the McMillan social media guidelines, get ready. And boom, it was in my inbox 5 minutes later, and he said, okay, here's, you're going to set up a Twitter, you're going to do Facebook, and da-da-da-da-da. They just map it out for you. You can do that yourself.
Now you mentioned the topic of risk. And that's not a new topic when it comes to people, writers, that, you know, okay, what if I put together a book proposal and send it to somebody, send it to an editor and a publishing company, and then they say no, and a year and a half later, a book on the same topic they published. They stole my idea. Electronically, can they steal your ideas? That's actually been a concern for quite a while. It's nothing new. On one level, there's not a lot you can do about it. For most people, it's not worth it to rip you off because it usually comes back to bite them. But that's where, again, where the role of an agent comes in. An agent, very, very few publishers, maybe smaller publishers and independent publishers, will still do this, but it's very, very rare for a mainstream publisher to take a look at material that has been sent directly from a writer. They live in mortal fear of the litigation that could result from it. You know, every so often we'll read about a book that's become on the bestseller list, and then you see that Joe Smith from Little Rock, Arkansas said, well, wait a minute, I sent a 2-page synopsis of this same idea to Random House a year ago. They must have taken my idea and given it to this guy who wrote a book on it, was making $1 million, and I'm still in Little Rock, Arkansas. So they won't do that. They will only accept submissions from agents. And agents are also still playing a big role as far as the electronic publishing book is too. If you have an agent representing your work, you have sort of like, which is an ironic term to use, but a paper trail. You know, they represent you, they have records, keep records of what was given to them and when, and who they sent it to and when, and who looked at it and what the reaction was. So it's not, you can still go the route of self-publishing or pursue that, but it doesn't mean that means you can't also keep looking for an agent. And one of the frequent questions I've always gotten asked over the years when I've done writing workshops and things is, well, how do you find an agent? Right? That's on everybody's mind. How do you find an agent? Why would somebody who has her office on, 48th and 6th, an agency, take a look at anything? And should I go into the couple of tricks of the trade? Okay. All right. There's the standard one, which Phil alluded to before. There's Writer's Digest. There's Writer's Market. There's the book called Literary Marketplace. You can find them in the reference section of libraries, including here. And you can go to where they list the agents, and they will give you their addresses, contact information. They'll give you, in some cases, what other authors they represent. They'll also tell you what areas of expertise they have, and that's important because you might see an agent. Oh, I like that person's name. I think I'll try her. But you have to look a little bit the fine print because if you're let's say you're writing a mystery novel, you want to make sure you notice there in a little bit of the write-up that this person whose experience is cookbooks, you know, then you're barking through, you're wasting his time, your time, everybody's time. So you want to make sure if you go to these standard routes of looking these things up that you're going to find an agent or agents that have expertise in your field, what it is you're working on, military history, sports, mystery writing, romance novels, whatever it is. There's also some of the other, I brought in here, there's, I recently signed on as a member, I'm surprised I haven't done it before this, of the organization Poets and Writers, which is a wonderful organization. And if you go on pw.org, that's their site, pw.org, they have a literary agents database. So you can just go on electronically on pw.org, and what they do is they give you the name of the agent, the agency name, interested in representing. And I'll just give you one example from here. There's somebody like Lisa Bankoff. Her firm is International Creative Management. Interested in representing autobiography, memoir, historical, narrative nonfiction. Okay. Then you have somebody else here, Julie Barra from the Barra Literary Agency, commercial fiction and literary fiction. She's interested in. So you can go on some of these, like Poets and Writers, a site has this database, which is really, really helpful too. And many people have found that they have made a list of agents, a dozen or whatever, and they send them a sample of what they're working on, and they will get a response from those agents. And hopefully, in one of those cases, the agent says, "I want to see more. I found this very interesting. Well, do you have more? So show me more." And you may eventually find that this person is saying, "You know what? I'm willing to represent you, and let's finish or let's shape. You know, if it's nonfiction, let's say the book proposal, which is a little separate discussion, if anybody's interested in that. But let me help you finish your book proposal, and then I will take over from there and decide who the editors are I want to send this to." And but there's a trick that I know I've discussed with Phil that most people don't think about, that I've recommended to people, and some of them have found it helpful. And that is, let's use as an example that you are interested in jazz, and you want to do a biography of Dizzy Gillespie, the great saxophone player, the trumpet player. And so that's you think that you could do a really good biography of him. He had a really interesting life. And you have written, let's say, a chapter and maybe a outline of the biography. You know, maybe you've written one chapter of a pivotal moment, a special concert Dizzy Gillespie gave that was a real turning point for him. It's an exciting chapter, and you have an outline of the rest of your book. You could go to pw.org. You could go to Literary Marketplace, the other sources I just mentioned, and you could find several agents who mention music. Maybe not jazz specifically, but music, or mention biography, and you can find some candidates there. But a suggestion I have is you come here to the East Hampton Library, and maybe a couple other libraries, depending on what you could find, and you look for books. You look for biographies of other jazz artists of the 20th century. You look for who's done books on Louis Armstrong, who's done books on Bix Beiderbecke, who's done books on Louis Prima, whatever. You know, biographies of jazz people. You could include Rosemary Clooney, some of the other great singers, even Frank Sinatra, whatever you want to do. And unless he's suicidal, an author in his acknowledgments thanks his agent. Okay? So you go to the acknowledgments and you see who's the agent who represented this book. And you do that with a dozen books. The more books that you can get, the better. So that's why you might have to have more than one library. You know, some libraries have more collections of musical biographies than others. And you know what may happen is as you're jotting these people down, you might see the same name or names mentioned more than once, maybe more than twice. And you might find that you looked at 15 books, and there's a person who was thanked, an agent who was thanked 3 times. Well, what that tells you is that this person, A, has a particular interest in this area, and B, must be somewhat successful at it because here's the actual books that have been published that were represented by this agent. Now, you know, most people don't think about this, but this is a way that you see direct evidence of the effectiveness of that agent in pitching and selling this project, and that's the person you want to put at the top of your list to send some material to.
Let me say one other thing, kind of, and we'll get to the other questions, on copyright. And the secret to this, if you're worried about the legality, is you have to demonstrate what's called first use. And that's actually pretty easy to do. It's as simple as taking your manuscript and doing that little circle C, and putting it on there.
You don't have to buy it?
Pardon me?
You don't have to buy that?
No, you don't. No, you don't. Because what you're saying is that, you know, as long as you date it, you put copyright, you know, John Smith, Phil Keith, Tom Clavin, such and such a date, that demonstrates first use in terms of legality. And if you've done it on your computer, obviously your hard drive is time-stamping everything that you're doing. And that's a legal way to demonstrate that you have. So, you know, if somebody steals your idea and you decide, I'm going to sue you, a judge or a court would look at who can demonstrate first use.